Friday edition of the Gary Sutton Show. Welcome back here on WSBA. And again, welcome to Richard Miniter, who is the author of Eyes on Target, Inside Stories from the Brotherhood of the U.S. Navy SEALs, which you can get out there. It's a new blockbuster. And by the way, I met Richard by phone first time many years ago in my earlier 9 to noon slot. And the book was Losing Bin Laden then, which was an incredible book, by the way. It was a great read. And if you go back now and read it, it's a great read. But, Richard, good to have you back on the show again.
Good to be back with you, Gary.
Richard, one of the things, I was reading your stories here, the tensions that have existed between the special warfare units and Big Navy are increasing. What's that all about?
Well, Big Navy is how the SEALs refer to the ordinary Navy, and definitely they're a part of it. They go through some of the same indoctrination and training as the rest of the Navy, and they wear Navy uniforms. But the culture is very different. The SEALs have always been more freewheeling, more daring, and their training a lot more rigorous. Most people don't realize this, but most of the Navy does not train on a regular basis with firearms. The Navy SEALs do. One of the changes, by the way, in the Clinton years was of arming Navy patrols aboard boats with shotguns. That was taken away. So when the USS Cole was attacked in 2000, the patrol at night wasn't armed, so it couldn't have shot at the approaching terrorist boat.
Wow.
But this sort of whole process has continued in the Obama years, and the SEALs, meanwhile, they often have vast gun collections. They actually love guns. They see guns as a tool. They're not idol worshippers of guns, but they're fascinated by them, and they become extremely good shots. The SEALs, for example, will spend in a special training facility called a kill house. They'll spend 8-10 hours a day after day for weeks on end, shooting thousands of rounds of ammunition, and just to stay sharp, to stay good, because their job involves instantaneous decisions of shoot, don't shoot. This person's a threat or not a threat.
By the way, I saw something this morning that the SEALs are actually asking the administration right now for $12 million to build a new facility for them, and there's some question as to whether or not they're getting it. Did you see that this morning?
Yeah, the SEALs, by the way, the SEAL budget in the Bush years just really went through the roof, and it's continued to grow in the Obama years. We're investing, the United States taxpayers investing more and more in Navy SEAL training, Navy SEAL equipment, and so on. But keep in mind, Gary, these are the guys doing most of the fighting, right? Because of the changes especially in the Obama years, the politically correct Army and Navy, a lot of the Army and Navy folks stay on base or on ship or on post. They don't go out and do patrols. And certainly now that we've pulled out of Iraq and we're pulling out of Afghanistan, the number of patrols in hostile territory done by ordinary American forces is way down, right? But the people who do go into enemy territory, the people who do carry out sniper missions, the people who do what are called snatch and grabs, burst through the door in the middle of the night and grab somebody and bring them in for questioning. A lot of that is done by U.S. Army Rangers, U.S. Navy SEALs, and other special forces. So they need the extra facilities, even though this facility is expensive, to stay on the fighting edge.
And we know that a lot of people said, during the years in fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan, that we are going to become an army of the future in terms of being lighter, less people, more lethal striking. Is that what they were looking at, were groups like the SEALs?
Well, the idea of a lighter footprint is something that came up originally with Rumsfeld, and it certainly continued for different reasons in the Obama years. What Rumsfeld wanted in the Bush years was a lighter force that's more adaptable, that can change more quickly. In the Obama years, they just want to cut spending. The only thing that liberals really want to cut is the military, the prisons, and the police. Everything else they want to spend more money on. But the things that ensure safety or law and order, those are the things they want to cut. And I have no idea why.
But when you look at this president, for example, I mean, he got Bin Laden with a SEAL force. They use, I know, drones a lot of the time. And to the naked eye out here, to the untrained eye, one would say, oh, okay, the president seems to be more in favor of this kind of thing than not. But apparently that's not what you're seeing behind the scene.
Right, exactly. First of all, I wrote an earlier book called Leading from Behind, which was a big bestseller.
That's back in 2012, I believe.
Yes, exactly. And which I have a chapter in there which details how Obama canceled the mission to kill bin Laden 3 separate times at the behest of Valerie Jarrett, one of his mentor and advisor. So, I mean, it wasn't that the president was gung-ho to get bin Laden. It was sort of his hand was forced by then CIA Director Leon Panetta and by Hillary Clinton, believe it or not, who was much tougher on al-Qaeda than President Obama. But the bigger issue here is that as you see America's retreat from the world is becoming a more dangerous place and is more willing to take a poke at us. You'll see a lot more Americans. People don't realize this. There are Americans being held hostage in Syria right now. And that happened after Obama backed down from his red line where he said he would send in bombers. So this projection of American weakness leads other people to be, leads bullies to be bold. As for the drone strikes, remember, even though drone strikes have tripled, the number of Hellfire missiles fired from drones has more than tripled since the Bush years, killing more terrorists than ever. What's the downside of that, Gary, is we're not capturing them and interrogating them.
Right.
And if you don't talk to them, you don't know what's in their heads. You don't know what the future plans are, what governments are backing them, where the hideouts are, and, what's public school or shopping mall they're going to strike next. You're just killing them. You're not learning anything from them. And that might turn out to be a more dangerous strategy. But it's politically easier for Obama because he campaigned on closing Guantanamo. He campaigned on civilian trials for terrorists. And his left-wing base doesn't want interrogation, doesn't want Guantanamo, doesn't want the answers to what the terrorists are actually up to.
We're talking with Richard Miniter, author of Eyes on Target, Inside Stories from the Brotherhood of the U.S. Navy SEALs. When you talk to the SEALs behind the scenes, what kind of things are they saying to you? What are some of the normal conversations that they have with you if they're willing to open up?
Well, they certainly were willing to open up. I mean, in a way, this book took years to do because I've been building contacts among them for a considerable length of time. Look, these guys are very competitive with each other. They're at the edge, constantly trying to run faster, swim longer, have the fastest car. I mean, this is just how they think. Very competitive, very aggressive, but on the other hand, very modest. You will not hear SEALs bragging about other SEALs or incredible feats of daring do, but very rarely will they're very confident, but they don't brag. It's kind of interesting. They're also, they're when they decide to drink and have a good time, it's like Animal House.
Yeah. I reminded of something a few years ago, and I can't remember exactly how it all came down. Maybe you can help me with this. When the president went down to talk to SEAL Team 6 after they had done this, and they came back home, and of course it was done in private, so no one knew who the identities were. But the president apparently, I think, wanted to single one out, and they kind of didn't let that happen. Can you address that at all?
Yes, I think that story is more complicated. The president wanted to shoot out to focus on someone who he thought had shot bin Laden,
right.
Killed bin Laden. And the SEALs were afraid that this was actually a legal trap, that by identifying who the shooter was, they're raising the possibility that charges could be brought against them. Did he really have a weapon? Was he entitled to shoot? Because look what's happened in American cities where when cops get into shootouts with bad guys, they now charge the cops and investigate the cops. Well, a lot of SEALs, they're well aware of this fact. I mean, they read, the NRA publications. They have friends who are in the police forces. They know what's happening. And they've also seen in the military a lot of what they think are bogus prosecutions. I mean, the one in Afghanistan that they always bring up, to me at least, is the case of Sergeant Alan Driver. This is a guy who had to deal with a senior al-Qaeda prisoner, took an empty plastic water bottle and hit the guy on the leg twice to get him in line, right? I mean, it's an empty plastic water bottle. He went to Leavenworth to Army prison for 4 years.
Get out of here. Really?
Yeah, so we have this incredible crackdown on any military mistake is punishable. And these left-wing, ask your callers. I mean, I bet you there are people in your audience who've been in the military, who've been through an experience or know about an experience like what I'm describing.
There was one that jumped out at me, and I was looking through some of the things in your book. And one that jumped out at me was the case of a SEAL who was working in Afghanistan, who was, I guess, had a beard on and so forth, so he could actually do his job with his unit for months. And something happened along the way where he had to get the beard shaved. Tell us the story.
Oh, yeah, this is an incredible story. I think he's a member of SEAL Team 1, which sometimes gets called by the other SEALs. No Fun 1. Anyway.
Why is that, No Fun 1?
They have nicknames for everything, I mean, and, some of them are off color. I don't know what the origin of No Fun 1 is.
Okay.
I've heard it a number of times, but there's a whole bunch of SEAL lore which is only known to, the roughly 2,000 men who've been in through the SEAL program, from 1962 onward. Anyway, so a lot of these guys are allowed to violate military protocol and grow long beards. And in fact, the Afghans they work with deep in the mountains or in the deserts of eastern Afghanistan will not tolerate an unshaven man. They think it's a woman or he's effeminate or whatever, and the allies simply will not work with unbearded men.
Wow,
it's a cultural difference, and people forget that other cultures are intolerant too, right?
Right.
So the SEALs have grown beards in order to collaborate and cooperate with local tribes of Afghanistan and be effective in their missions. But as you know, growing a 8, 10, 12-inch beard takes a long time. It takes months. And when they would get military inspections, I believe there was a Navy captain coming through, they were required to shave their beards. So it's a 20-minute or 2-hour whatever inspection. For that short amount of time, they've got to be in starched white uniforms and clean shaven. But that means that they cannot go back into the fight. They've just lost months and months of fighting while they're waiting to regrow their beard. And this is the disconnect between big Navy and naval special warfare. There's these little differences.
There's a story in your book, and I want to kind of end, well, at least partially end with this today. And it's a story about a Congressional Medal of Honor winner saving another Congressional Medal of Honor winner, which I thought was extraordinary. Tell that story, will you?
Oh, that's a great story. It'll probably take me too long to tell it.
Go ahead.
But this is the only story. We do a chapter to it in Eyes on Target. The only story of one U.S. Congressional Medal of Honor winner saving the life of another Congressional Medal of Honor winner. And it takes place in Vietnam on a mission that has gone wrong and against incredible odds. One man saves the life of the other. And when he is presented, just a little taste of the story, when he's presented with his Congressional Medal of Honor by President Nixon, the president asks him, "Is there anything I can do for you?" And he says, "Yes, sir. Break this medal in half, and give it to the man next to me because he deserves it too."
Wow.
I mean, it's an incredible story, but I'd have to come back on your show and tell it because it takes about 15 minutes.
We'll do that again. You don't have to worry about that. But tell me, what kind of motivated you to write this story? Because I mean, it's intriguing just to hear the few tales you've told us here about the inside stories from the Brotherhood of the U.S. Navy SEALs. So, what kind of motivated you to write this story? I guess there's a mystery around these guys, right?
There is a mystery around these guys, and it's always great to be able to take the reader into secret worlds and show him what's really going on, right? But second of all, I think it's a matter of profound national importance. I think, Gary, we need to have a national conversation about the SEALs and about the other special warfare units, the commandos that fight for us and keep us safe. Because I think the changes being brought about in the Obama years are not good. I think this political correctness, punishing people for trivial offenses or for things that wouldn't have been offenses 10, 15 years ago, punishing people for using the wrong words, being unable to state things clearly because of it's like the problem is the U.S. Navy, especially the SEALs, have become like a college campus with all of the elaborate rules of college campuses. And it's creating some injustice. Like the case I told you at the beginning of this segment about Carl Higbee.
Right.
I mean, we took this guy and the other members of SEAL Team 10 out of the fight for almost 2 years over a bloody lip from a prisoner who had burnt and killed 4 Americans and boasted about it on video. There's no doubt about the guy's guilt.
And he was still living, and they didn't kill him.
They didn't kill him. And also, I should add one detail. Al-Qaeda, we've seen from their captured manuals, there's an Al-Qaeda manual captured in the Somali Plains of Afghanistan that shows them how to use America's legal system against Americans.
Yeah.
So on 9/11, they used our planes against us. Now they're being trained to use our legal system against us. So, Gary, it's time to be honest, right? If they have manuals, Al-Qaeda has manuals to use our rules against us, maybe we need to change our rules. Maybe a bloody lip shouldn't take a warrior out of the fight for 2 years. Maybe it shouldn't lead to these record number of retirements. That's why I wrote this book. That's why I wrote Eyes on Target.
Yeah, Eyes on Target, Inside Stories from the Brotherhood of the U.S. Navy SEALs. Where can people find it, Richard?
You can find it on Amazon.com or in any major bookstore.
I look forward to talking to you again soon, my friend. It's been far too long, and it was a great meeting yesterday. We'll do it again. And again, I hope people will go out and check out Eyes on Target, Inside Stories of the Brotherhood of the U.S. Navy SEALs. Fascinating stuff. Richard, thanks so much for joining me today on the show.
Thanks, Gary. Happy to come back anytime.
You'll be there. Take care. Richard Miniter with us here on WSBA. We're going to take a break. We'll come back with some more stuff that's been happening today, all here on the Gary Sutton Show on News Radio 910 WSBA.